This Spring 4 MVC RESTful tutorial extends the previous one with two additional methods in the controller. One is we're going to do a get method with a path variable, and another one is the post method. So post is used to create new resources. For example, if the resource is an account, we create a new account. If the resource is an employee, then we create a new employee. But the post and get are called the verbs. That's the action you're doing. So the action is basically like a CRUD operations: create, read, update, or delete. Mostly they all will be database related. So in create, basically you'll be creating a database record. In read, you'll be reading a record from the database. Update means you'll be updating an existing record in the database, and D means you'll be deleting a record in the database, and you'll be making all through the HTTP protocol from a RESTful web service. So you can have a page maybe written in a JavaScript based framework like AngularJS or React.js and so on, and those frameworks in the form or whatever, or when it's displaying a results or whatever, it'll be making a RESTful web service call to the backend server, and then the backend server will, depending on what type of verb it is, like if it is a post or get or whatever, it'll be performing different operations. So in the previous tutorials we just did accounts, where basically we were getting all the accounts back. So basically here the accounts, and we were getting all the accounts back. So instead of going to the database, because it's just a simple tutorial, we hard coded it. So I created an account object, then we saw that in the pom.xml file we got the data binding frameworks, which is a com.fasterxml.jackson. so this is for the JSON and this is for the XML. So in this tutorial we will extend those methods with two additional methods. One is with the path parameter, get with the path parameter, and it produces an XML output. So you get an XML out. And then the other one is the post, which get an XML posted, and it gets captured into the account, and then we do something with it, like for example go back to the database and save that information. So firstly, and also we showed you that in the WizTools.org we downloaded a client tool, and this particular tool is very handy to test your RESTful web services. It supports all different HTTP verbs, methods, and then in the URL you have to only use nouns. For example, simple web is a context, entry is where the dispatcher servlet is mapped to, v1 is the version 1, because you might have future different versions and you might export additional methods, you might modify the signature of an existing RESTful web service and so on. So it's good practice to version your RESTful web services. And forecasting is kind of a domain. And then we did something called accounts, and then if you hit enter you will get all the accounts back. So basically it hits the web service at the back, and then because I'm already running this particular simple web.war, and it gets into this method because it's mapped to the URI of accounts, and it creates a number of accounts, and then it invokes the data binding. So in this case it's a JSON, so you will be getting a JSON back. So because I have to run this, and because we are getting an XML here, because I need to build this again and run it. So I'll go in here, I'll say run as maven install. So it has run. So I take the simple web.war, copy this, and I need to go into the C tools, Apache Tomcat this thing, and the web apps folder, and then paste it here, and it will be automatically hot deployed, and you will see that in here. So it's moving here, it's deploying it, and then if I run it again I should be getting the JSON back. So I go back to the WizTools, run it the accounts again, so I get the JSON back. Now, so all these things in detail we covered in the previous tutorial, so you can refer to that. And in this one, I'm exposing another additional methods via the parameters. So here it's called the path variable. We want one particular account. We want to get one account ID from the database. So from the URI's perspective, see here I'm going to say account, and then I say I need account number 123. And then on the back end, what I have is anything with account, and this is the parameterized path variable ID will automatically come into this. So it will be basically a string of passing ID, and this ID will be captured here. So, and also we need to annotate here as at path variable. So we are passing a path variable of ID, and it will come into this method, and in real systems it will be going to the database, passing this ID and retrieve the account object by that particular account ID, and then returning that account. But in this case we're just simplifying it by creating an account object with the passed in ID and John R as the value and the big decimal $235. So if I run this now, and also what XML type, we are getting an XML type, so it produces a media type of XML. So if I go back in here and then run this again, we're getting an XML back. ID is 123, John R, because all hard coded at the back end, and 235. If I change the ID to say 456 and then run this again, see now ID is coming at 456. Still we can get the same John R and $235 because we just have hard coded it. But ID, whatever the ID we pass in here as a path variable, gets returned here because we are creating that object with the passed in path variable, which is ID. So which is an ID here. So you need to annotate it with a path variable, and whatever the response we are sending back, we need to use at response body to send it back. That's because we are using at controller annotation. If we change this to at rest control annotation, then we don't need this at response body. We can remove that and it will become just account, get account, and so on. So this is done. Now the next thing is we have a post method. Post method, it requires something with /account. It's the same account, but because the method is post, if you have two methods with the same URI, one is a get and the other one is a post, depending on what method you have selected here, get or post, it will go to that particular method call. So in this case, method is request method post, and anything that with the URI of /account is going to come here, and whatever the thing we posted is going to be captured via the at request body annotation. So what it does is at request body tells you whatever the XML that's going to come in is going to get unmarshaled into the object here, the account, and then I can do a system.out line creating account, and whatever the value I pass gets captured, and then I'm sending a response entity back and saying HTTP status is also okay, and this gets sent via the response entity. We can remove the response entity if we use a REST controller. We have look at that later. So if I go in here now instead of get, now in the method I want to select the post. Then I go into the body, and here I need to say what MIME type I'm going to send. So I select this, then I'm going to say application /XML because that's the type I'm going to use. Then I say okay. So now it says application /XML, the body. So now I'm going to copy a request body from here. So this one I'm going to copy this. So copy here, Control C, then I go back to my Viz Tools, and then I paste it here. So this is the XML that I'm going to post. So this XML account 123 John R 235 will go in here. It will go to this method and it gets unmarshaled into the account object. Then I should be able to see the print line statement in my Tomcat server, and also it should return the same account back with the status of OK. So I'll go here and run it, and it's an error. So let's see what the error is. request method post not supported. That's why, because we didn't change the URL here. It's not just 456, it's just account. And then I'm going to run it again. So now get HTTP 1.1 to 100. So 200 means success. Before we saw we had a wrong URL, you get a different HTTP status. So this is 1, 2, 3. So it's also a best practice for you to capture all the errors via the different HTTP status codes. So if I run this here, see you get 405, which is a bad request status code, or some URL. This particular URI is not supported. Obviously we didn't support this account 123 with the post. We only supported that with a get. So that's, we only supported that with a get here, not with the post. So I go in here and get rid of this 123 and is an account. Then I run it. Now it's successful, 200. And then if I go to the server, so look at the server here, see it's printing now. Creating account, ID is 123, name is John R, balance is 235. This is what exactly we do, this printout here. And also we get a response entity back, and you can see the response entity back in here. The same value, 123, whatever we pass, John R, and so on. Now I can go here, I can change this to REST controller. Get rid of this. So this, you're specifically saying Spring, this is a RESTful web service call, not the web service, not the Spring Web MVC call that returns a JSP or a HTML page via JSP or whatever, or time leaf. This is basically a RESTful. So now what we can do is, this response body is not required. We can remove that because we are annotating it with REST controller. This response body can go away, and also we don't need this. We don't need this either. So I can go and remove this, and then I can just say return the account. And here we have to say return account. Save this, and obviously there will be some redundant imports. All these are not required. So now I do Control Shift O to organize imports, so it will get rid of all the unused imports. So now we got all these done. Now I can go and build it again. So go select the simple web project, run as, maven install, and then I can copy the simple web war and I go into my Tomcat folder and web apps folder and paste it, and it's going to hot deploy it now. So it's deploying it. Then I can go and make my same post. I got the same results back, and also you can see it in the web. It is printed creating account ID 123. So it is quite powerful. So you can also now then test delete, put is to modify, and also there are some usefulness in using head. So head is if you want to see a particular resource has been modified or not, so when you are caching. So all these things I have mentioned it inside the previous tutorial where I mentioned 12. So if you go inside Spring, if you go into Java JE interview questions under web service, there's a thing called 12 rules to write RESTful web service, so which is very, very important. It covers interviews can grill you on these questions. So I've gone through those 12 and say what are the things you got to write. Stateless RESTful web service, some explanation. How do we do authentication? So you can't just call RESTful web service, you need to authenticate which is a valid URI or not. How do we do authentication? What are the nouns and what are the verbs? What is the difference between get and head? How do we cache our get methods? And how do we use via the client to proxy server? And how do we make sure that when two users try to concurrently access the same resource? How do you send an error and how do you update the stale data and so on? So these are very important considerations in building quality RESTful web service API. In the modern web applications, most of the time will be spent on creating RESTful web services, and also I've touched on the HATOs as well, which is the hypermedia as the engine of application state. So you can I'll put a link at the bottom of it, 12 rules to write RESTful web service API.